Hello class, welcome to week 5, and in today's class we are going to do some location analytics for a real estate developer. Over here I have a problem definition for the real estate problem that we are trying to solve in today's class. So the problem for today's class, or the problem definition for today's class, is that let's assume that you are a real estate agent and you want to buy a land to start your new residential venture in Durban, South Africa. It's not Durban, it's Swellendam, sorry. We don't have the data for Durban, so the only data that I have for South Africa is around like Swellendam and some other cities of South Africa, and not Durban. So okay, and so that's that. And so what we want to do for this location or for this real estate problem is that we want to use some location analytics to identify the right location to start the new venture for this real estate developer. So this real estate developer had some conditions that we want to make sure that we meet these conditions over here. Well, so once all of these 4 conditions are met, we will say that this is the most appropriate or the most feasible location for the real estate developer. So the conditions that the real estate developer has laid down to the location analytics team is that the town must be in Swellendam, which is in South Africa, and this also means that the data that I'm going to be using for today's class is the South African data set. And because the target population or the target market for this real estate development venture is the family people, which means that they are going to have kids, and this means that the site must have a high school. And so the other condition that must be met in the location analytics is that because this is going to be a residential property, it must be within the reasonable distance of 4 kilometers. That is, the school must be within the 4 kilometers from the school. And the last condition for this location selection is that the site that we are going to select for this real estate property venture is that the selected site must have access to highways within 5 kilometers. So these are the 5 conditions that these are the 4 conditions that must be met for this real estate agent, so as to conclude that this is the most feasible or the most appropriate location to start his new real estate venture. So now that said, I'm going to start my QGIS. Over here, it's going to take a while. So okay, so I have it here. I'm going to start it like this. And okay, so I have the data over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop this file over here, which is the continent shape file. And after we have this, I'm going to drag and drop the South African shape file. So once I have this, I'm going to zoom into layer, and then again. And okay, so going back to this 4 conditions over here. So when I stated these 4 conditions, I'm sure that you must have an idea that we are going to use multiple data sets or the multiple shape files for this problem. And for this, we are going to need a shape file or a data set that contains the roads information, which are going to have the information of whether the certain roads are highway, or so the certain roads are private road, or whether certain roads are residential, all those kind of criterias. And we're also going to have the information, and the other data set that we are going to use is we are going to have the data set that will tell us whether the certain area has the high school or not. So that's the second data set that we'll be using. And we're also going to have the information of the roads or the highways. And so that means that we're going to need 3 different data sets for this problem. So what I'm going to do is I have all the data sets in here. Sorry. Okay. So the first one is the towns shapefile. So I'm going to drag and drop it over here. The other is the schools, which contains information about whether the certain areas within Solendam town has the schools or not. And then the other is the roads shapefile. Okay, so this is it. Okay, and then after I have this, I'm going to zoom it a little. Okay, so let's go back to our problem definition. So the first problem definition is that the town must be in Swellendam. So I'm going to go to this layer which has the information of of towns. So before we try to before we go forward with the filtering of towns information, let's look at the information that is contained within this towns layer. So over here we see that there are like multiple variables that contains multiple information. So over here we see that there is a variable called town, and there is information that's there. If you are from South Africa, those names must be familiar, but because I've only been to the Durban part of South Africa, this area is not very familiar to me. So okay, so we see that there is this one town that's Solendam. Okay, so there are we know that this variable called town from the town shapefile has the information of whether the certain location is in Solendam or not. So that's the only thing we wanted to confirm. So after we have that, we're going to go to this filter criteria, and if we select this one and then see, okay, so over here you can see that there are multiple unique. So over here you see that once you click on this one, you'll see the unique list of unique values that is contained by this town town variable. So instead of Swellendam, let's say if we wanted the site to be located within the Ashton or Berrydale or in a Breed River DC, and likewise so in that case you would be doing town equals, in this case it's Swellendam for us, so I'm just going to do it Swellendam over here. But like I said, instead of Swellendam, if you wanted the site to be located in some other towns like Montague, Berrydale, Ashton, then you will replace Swellendam with the name of the required town. So if I click on test, it's going to tell me how many rows has the information has Swellendam as their town location. So I'm going to click on OK over here. So once we do that, you will see that the areas that do not fall within Swellendam town gets removed from this layer over here. And so that's that. So now we have our first condition fulfilled. So let's go back to our roads layer. And so one of the criteria that we had for this site selection is that the site must have easy access to highway. So for this, what we would like to do is we'd like to go to this roads area where let's open the attribute table and see what kind of information it has. So this file has 4 variables: type, name, one-way lanes, etc. So amongst this, we want to select certain roads that are either okay, I have the formula over here. So in the roads shapefile, we want to select the roads that are either classified as primary, secondary, tertiary, or trunk. So to do that, what we will do is we'll go back to the roads again, and we'll go to filter. And if you go over here, you'll see like all kinds of information. So in this case, we don't want the road that is classified as residential or service, track, anything like that. But instead, we only want to select those roads that are classified as primary, secondary, or tertiary, or trunk. So I'm going to copy paste this formula over here, and we will be doing something like this. So this is what I have in here, but in case, let's say you want to select the roads that is classified as residential, instead of primary, you'll select residential. And instead of secondary, if you want, let's say you want like service road, then you're just going to replace all of these by the variable names that's in here. So okay, so this I have this code over here, and this is very similar to SQL query, and like I've always been saying, and if you have a SQL background, then this code must be very familiar to you. But in case it does not, then anytime you want to select multiple conditions, in which you want to, let's say, like if one or the two conditions is fulfilled, then then the condition is satisfied. So in those kind of conditions, you will use OR. But let's say you want two conditions that must be made. It's not like one or the other can be made. It's like two conditions must be made. For instance, let's say that I want to select the roads that is classified both as primary and secondary. Then instead of OR, I'll be doing AND. But in this case, I only want to select roads that are either classified as primary, or secondary, or tertiary, or trunk. It does not matter to me whether the roads is okay, I think I chose the wrong word. So what I was trying to say is I don't really care about a road being classified both as primary or secondary, but but then if it's just primary or secondary, then I'm good with how the road has been classified. So that's that. So if I do the test, it will tell me that 345 of the data meet these conditions. So I'm going to do OK. So now that we have selected roads that are just classified as primary, secondary, tertiary, or trunk, which is basically the highways. So okay, and so those kind of roads, they are marked with purple sign over here. And let's go to our another condition. So the third condition that we have is a selected site must have a high school. So we will go to our schools shapefile, and we will go to before that, let's look at the information that's here. Okay, has high school? Yes, no. Okay, so we see that this variable has underscore high underscore s has information of whether that area has high school or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to filter, and we are going to do yes. Oh, we only return 3 rows. Okay. So let's say if it is no. Okay, it's bad. Alright, so okay, so now we see that there are only 3 schools located, and the second condition is that the schools must be within 4 kilometers. The residential property must be within the 4 kilometer. Okay,